In this next lesson, what we plan to do is to understand, now that we've introduced a course, what next? How is this course going to be delivered? So, I like to teach in a way that makes things more practical. And to make things more practical, I need to set context. I need to contextualize things. That way, whatever I'm teaching can be relatable. So, in this context, we decided to come up with a fictional company. And I just came up with the name Bright Path Services Limited. So Bright Path is a fictional company that I just came up with, and we would assume that it does a lot of things. Sometimes we would assume it is a sneaker selling company. Sometimes we would assume it is a membership company. Sometimes we would assume it's an e-commerce company. Sometimes we would assume it is an engineering company that has to do with civil engineering, or sometimes we would assume that it's a company that does all sort of things. Now, what is common in any company or any setup or any business entity that exists that produces value for serving customer needs, regardless of the context? What we understand is that any company or any entity definitely is going to have departments. They're going to have an HR department, how they source human resources. They're going to have an IT department that's in charge of having all the technical equipment that they need to be able to use to be able to provide the services. They're going to have customer support. If anyone has issue with the services they provide, there's somewhere to report it to. There's always a finance department that makes sure that everything is moving in terms of monetary wise. There's always an operations department that makes sure that the standard operating procedures across the entire company is up to date and is being adhered to. And there's always going to be a management, higher level. They make sure that they think about the long term future of the company. So that means we have contexts that we can use for our use case. So Bright Path Services is going to be assuming a lot of use cases and for the context of this course. And the reason why we're using that is because it gives us the option to be able to assume realistic scenarios like your day-to-day work, and it provides a safe learning environment. I don't want to be bogged down to just one context and then it would be biased to that. We have to use use cases from different contexts so that any other person that's watching this course can get real value out of it, and they can see how maybe that can be translated into their line of work. And based on that, what we normally would be doing in this course is that we're going to get a lot of raw information. When I say raw information, that means whatever you're working on in that heat of the moment, if it's an email or if it's an Excel sheet, if it's a Word document, any source of documentation, we call that raw information. And what we'll be doing is we would be using that as a source of a document, and we'll be bringing it into ChatGPT, and then we'll engage with it in ChatGPT to refine it and then get a professional output. Now, professional output could be anything. It could be an email reply. It could be a Word document that needs to be created. It could be an Excel document that needs to be created. It could be a PDF. It could be a PowerPoint. It could be literally anything. So that workflow is what we're going to be adopting. So we are always going to be assuming use cases, how to piece things together, how to bring it into ChatGPT together with what we call a prompt, and then we will tweak it, we'll iterate it, we'll refine it until we get how we want it, and then we do whatever we need to do when we get the output, whether that's going to be sent as an email reply or whatever, depending on the use case. So this is how practically the course is going to be delivered. So that's more about the context. I'll talk to you in the next lesson where we would be paying attention to some things that are important to note while we go deeper.